One of our viewers recently asked us this question: what is the best way to override an Oracle-defined style? Oh man, this is such a great question, and I think what makes it so great is that there isn't a single good answer. We have options, but I can't say one method is necessarily better than any other method. And before answering that question, we have to understand something about CSS, and that is its cascading nature. So let's dive into that now, and we'll answer the question that the viewer asked in a future episode. But first, CSS isn't fluid specific. CSS is a web standard and has been part of PeopleTools since the creation of the pure internet architecture. What that means is everything you learn about CSS applies to Classic as well as Fluid. Now, Fluid makes CSS easier, but Classic and Fluid both use CSS. Okay, so let's find an example online. Let's see, here is a custom page built using Oracle Standard Style classes. Now in the upper right corner, we find the Save button. Now the Save button here, it is a nice dark blue. Question is, why is it dark blue? Well, I have a couple of answers for you. First, it's because I'm using 858. 858 uses dark blue for primary buttons, whereas in 854 through 57, it would have been a green color. The second reason it is blue, and I gave it away, it's because I have the primary style class associated with it. So let's inspect here. Let's use the browser inspector tools to view the HTML associated with this button. Now, if I were to look at this button in Application Designer attached to a page in Application Designer, what I'd find is PSC_primary. That would be the style class. So if you're thinking about Fluid and building Fluid pages and content in Application Designer, you would double click or open up the properties for an element, and you would go over to the fourth tab. The fourth tab would be the Fluid tab. You would look at the style classes, and on the style classes, you would see PSC primary. That would be the only style class you would see. Now, if you look here, you see 1, 2, 3 style classes. The first 2 style classes are attached by the framework, associated through the framework. This third one is the one that I added as a developer in Application Designer. Now that one element, this outer div element, is the one element that I can style from Application Designer. But if you look here, you'll notice that the one button that I drag and drop onto a page in Application Designer renders as a composite HTML element. What do I mean by that? I have a nested HTML structure here. I asked for a button. PeopleSoft gave me a div element, and inside that div element, it gave me a span, and inside that span element, it gave me a hyperlink. So if we look here at the nested composite structure, and then we look over to the right-hand side, you'll see the Styles panel. In the Styles panel, I see there is the PS Box button, and we see what we call selectors here now. A selector is some way that the browser associates a style rule defined in the style sheet delivered by PeopleSoft called PS Style Def F mode. I'm working with Fluid here, so it's going to be the F mode, Fluid mode style sheet. And I can see there's a rule defined for a class named PS Box button. Now this class name here, or this item here at the front, that's what we call a CSS selector. Now, just to define really quickly, what is a CSS selector? A CSS selector is something, some way, it's some rule that tells the browser how to associate the rule, the CSS rule, with an HTML element. It says, hey, whenever you find an element that matches this selector, apply these style rules. The style rules being line height and vertical alignment, font weight, white space handling, PS Box button, PS Box button. Yeah, so we can see there are a couple of different style rules applied here to this one style class. Now the dot here in front tells the browser, hey, this is based on a class attribute. So if we look here, we see the class attribute. Now CSS selectors can be based off of a variety of different things. They could be based off of IDs, element IDs. That's the most specific selector. But hey, let's save that. Let's talk about selector specificity in another episode. Basically, a selector is just some way to identify an element. See, if we look through the list here, there are tons of HTML elements on this page and in this HTML. And basically the idea of a selector is to say, when you find an element that matches this selector, then apply these rules. Line height, vertical alignment, font weight, white space. You know what I don't see here? I don't see color. Okay, so what we know from this by looking at the rules defined here on the right-hand side is that color is not identified on the outer element. Let's work our way in. Let's go to the span element. From the span, I see PS button wrapper, PS button wrapper. Okay, I don't see a color there either. You know what's interesting though? I do see PS box button. Wait a minute, there's no PS box button class here. Oh, but there is a PS box button class here, isn't there? What we can see is the word inherited. See, when I think of the term cascading, and that's what I want to talk about, is the cascading nature of style sheets. There are actually two ways that we hear people describing cascading with style sheets. One is the cascading nature of the inheritance, meaning I define up here, but the styles cascade down sometimes. Some styles do. Should I say attributes do. And that's what we see here, that the line height attribute was inherited up above. But there's another way, the most common way that cascading is discussed, and that's what we're going to look at next. Here I'm looking at the hyperlink element, and in the hyperlink element, I see that, oh, look, in fact, there is a color. But here, let's look at the selectors again. So we see PSC primary, okay, PSC primary, there's a style class PSC primary. Now, when PS button, that's what this is, PS button, is a child of PSC primary. That's what my selector is saying here. Let's go back here to PS button. Notice the PSC underscore primary space PS button. But you read that in reverse. When PS button is a child of PSC primary, then apply these styles. Now you notice the selector is a whole lot longer than that. What we have here is actually a comma delimited list of selectors. So we can say PSC primary, we got PS box button. We have a whole bunch of different comma delimited list there. Now, it's very important here. I want you to look at the list there. It might be difficult to see there in the recording, but the first selector is a darker bold color. It's not bold, it's just a darker color. And then the other comma delimited selectors, the comma delimited list of selectors, they're a lighter shade of gray. Question is why? This darker one is the one that actually matches. The other ones are defined at the same line, at the same level. In PS Style Def F mode, it's defined all as one line. Comma delimited list of selectors. But only the dark one matches. The lighter gray ones, they're just along for the ride. They don't match this specifically selected element. They might match some other element, but not this one. So I can see the color here, I can see the background color, and I can see the background. Okay, and I can see there's a blue for the background color and the border color. The actual color itself, the words, they're white, aren't they? Actually, it's going to be a shade of white. So if we look at here, just another side note, what we see is we see hexadecimal here. It's the red, the green, and the blue. You can see there are actually two, what do I want to say, characters for each piece there. It's 0 through 255, 255 represented as hexadecimal, which happens to be FF. 00 through FF. Those are your numbers, so to speak, in hexadecimal, your numbers for the colors, red, green, and blue. So this is not exactly white because FF, 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 255, 255, 255 would be pure white. But this is slightly off-white. Let's say it that way, slightly off-white. And then we have a blue color. Now, the cascading nature. Let's scroll down and let's look at all of the other styles because we see PSC primary, PS button. But PS button by itself also has styles. See, let's take away the PSC primary. Let's see what the button looks like without the style class PSC primary. Okay, so it has blue as the color and white or perhaps transparent as the background color, but it has a blue as the border color. Now, if we look down here at PS button, I don't see it. Let's find it really quickly. Oh, I haven't selected the button. I apologize. There we go. Now I see it. Okay, PS button. So we can see the border color, and we can see the color, and we can see the background defined here. Oh, it is white. FFF. Okay, which is shorthand for FFFFFF. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and back on this one. Let's add the PSC primary back in here. And then, of course, this time go back and select the link. Now, notice the PSC primary has the color, but let's go back down because we notice that PS button by itself has a background, a color, and a border. But oh, look, now they are crossed out. They've got a strike through. They're crossed out. What is that? That's an override happening here. So at the PSC primary, what we're saying is when it is PSC primary, that overrides PS button. So color is being overridden. Background is being overridden. Border color is actually not being overridden. Why is that? They're the same. You know what I'm going to say? I'll bet they are being overridden. It's just that it's the same, so the browser isn't really catching it. But the cascading nature is that we have a couple of different style definitions here, or should I say selectors with different attributes. Now, the PS button, see this right here, it is a PS button, isn't it? Since it is a PS button, it gets all of the style classes of PS button, or should I say, sorry, all of the style attributes of PS button. But then when it's a PSC primary, see, because PSC primary is a little bit more specific, it's not only a PS button, it's a PSC primary PS button. Then it gets these colors plus all the others. Now, if we go to the computed tab, we can see all of them combined together. So we can see the background color. Okay, where's background color coming from? Well, it's coming from this line in PS Style Def. Oh, actually, it comes from two different places. Which one do you want? Line 2258 as well as 1933. But we can see that 2258 is being overridden by 1933. Let's see, what else do we have? We have border bottom. No. Let's find color itself. Color is being overridden, isn't it? Yeah, actually, from quite a few different places. See, so those are some of the things that we can see from computed. We can see what's the actual combined, what's the end result, and where do those come from. Let's do this. Now, this is not how I would do this. See, the question from the viewer was, how would you override the Oracle delivered styles? I just want to show you right here. Okay, what's the end result? What would it look like? Let's do this. Let's go with a border color of red, orange. Or is it orange, red? Orange, red. And let's go with a background color of dark orange. I like that. You know, while we're here, let's make the font bold as well. Font weight, oops. Font weight, font weight, bold. Okay, I like it. So the question the viewer asked is, how would you override the Oracle delivered styles? Now, right here, I'm actually replacing the Oracle delivered styles. This would be a customization to the Oracle delivered styles. I don't want to do that. What I wanted to describe for you at this point was the cascading nature. Oh, let's see. Oh, let's save it for another lesson. What I was going to say is, well, here's where we want to get to. Instead of replacing the Oracle delivered style, what we perhaps want is a more specific selector than the one Oracle delivered, so that we can override the styles without replacing the styles. But before we can do that, we need to understand selector specificity. For example, I don't want to override the color. I like it. It's white. It works great. Well, it's an off-white, but it works great for our scenario. Let's keep it. What do I want to override? It's the border color, the background color. Okay, so now if we were to look at that in the future, well, here, let's do it this way. Let's reload, so it resets. Let's find our button again in the HTML. And then let's go up here to the element. Let's say background color. And we did that as orange, no, dark orange. Dark orange. And then we want to override the border color. And we did that as orange, red. Okay, I like it. But if you look, we actually have styles defined in 3 places now, don't we? We have the initial PS button. That's here, PS button. PeopleTools is overriding because it's PSC primary. And we're further overriding with, in this case, it's hard-coded element styles. Now, in a future episode, what we'll do is we'll move those into our own style definitions, our own style rules. But let's save that for another episode. Now, what we've done here is purely in the browser. We have not persisted anything back to the database. Actually, as you saw, when I hit the refresh button, it goes back to the Oracle delivered. We're just mocking it up here in the browser so we can get a good understanding for what does the HTML look like, what does the CSS look like, and how can I prototype the changes that I desire. That's what we're doing here in the web browser. We're just using the web browser tools for prototyping purposes only, not to persist. Now, we'll cover persistence in a future episode. Now, at JSM Pros, we believe Fluid is one of the most important PeopleTools technologies to learn. After all, it is Oracle's strategic direction, and that is why we teach Fluid several times per month. Be sure to check out our website to see when we're offering it next. Or here's an idea. Subscribe to our LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter feeds to receive updates every time we post a course. Or, do you have a team that wants to learn Fluid? Give us a call. Let's get something scheduled. Now, before we go, I have a question for you. Do you have an idea or a topic you'd like us to cover in a future soundbite? Let us know by sharing your idea at soundbites.jsmpros.com. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more content. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.